Let's have a conversation about depression. Depression is one of the modern illnesses. It's mostly a modern thing. I'm not saying people back in the days, in prehistory, tribal days, didn't get depressed. There were certainly some individuals that probably got depressed, right? But they were too busy surviving. They didn't have time to sit down and think and then get depressed. They were too busy surviving. This reminds me of a scene from The Sopranos. Well, Tony Soprano, the mob boss, he was depressed. He was going to his shrink and just depressed. You know, doesn't even want to get out of bed. Just, you know, the absolute worst depression symptoms. And then there was an incident where two people tried to shoot him while he was driving his car, and that woke him up, and then he went to his shrink and he said, "I don't have to see you no more because I'm not depressed anymore." And he told her, the shooting that has happened to me scared off my depression. Now his depression came back to him after, but in that moment he wasn't depressed because he was fighting for survival. So this is why this is a modern thing. It's a modern thing because now humans are finding themselves in large numbers, for the first time in history, in large numbers, with enough time to sit down and think and be in their heads and live in their minds in their heads, and causing many people to be depressed, amongst many other reasons. It's also the physical inactivity and many things, right? So I want to read you guys like the symptoms of depression, okay, like the actual symptoms, so you know what kind of depression are we talking about here. So in almost all activities, as well as at least 5 other symptoms. So anyway, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders defines a major depressive episode. So we're talking a major depressive episode as at least 2 weeks of a depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure in almost all activities, as well as at least 5 other symptoms, such as sleep issues on almost daily basis, either difficulty sleeping or sleeping too much, changes in appetite and weight, change of more than 5% body weight in a month, or a decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day, decreased energy or fatigue almost every day, difficulty concentrating, making decisions and thinking clearly, psychomotor agitation or retardation that is observable by others, so brackets, slow physical movements or unintentional or purposeless motions, recurrent thoughts of death or suicide attempt, or a specific plan for suicide. So that's the definition of a major depressive episode, okay? So keep that in mind. The statistics I'm going to tell you guys here are talking about these pretty severe symptoms. So 300 million people around the world have depression, according to the World Health Organization. So that's 300 million people out of 7 billion people who have major depressive episodes. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of fucking people. Because keep in mind, we're talking about a major depressive episode. We're not talking about sort of depression, right? We're not talking about, I mean, there's a lot of people that are sort of depressed. They don't exactly meet those criteria like 100%. Maybe some people don't have suicidal thoughts, but they have a lot of symptoms that may eventually lead there. But 300 million people out of 7 billion people, 300 million people have depression, are living with depression. 16.2 million adults in the United States, equaling to 6.7% of all adults in the country, have experienced a major depressive episode in the past year. Okay? That's 6.7% of the adult population in the United States. We're talking major depressive episode. It's a lot of people. That's a big percentage. That's a big percentage, because that means there is a even bigger percentage of people who are sort of depressed, in between. You see? And that's just in the past year. 10 million US adults experienced an episode that resulted in severe impairment. Nearly 50% of all people diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with anxiety disorder. It is estimated that 15% of the adult population will experience depression at some point in their life. I don't know if they're talking about the world adult population or United States adult population, but it seems like these figures are only rising up. And I think I read it from another source that nowadays depression is even more common with younger people. So these figures are only estimated to go up. And these are big figures because we're talking about a major depressive episode. We're talking about people who went and got themselves diagnosed. How many people are living with depression and have never even spoken about it with anybody? So, I don't know where to start with this video. First of all, depression in the modern age, in the modern global civilization, is a natural byproduct of the lifestyle of the masses of populations. It is just that. That is my own little definition of depression. The natural byproduct of the way of which the masses of the populations live worldwide, and more specifically in the United States, in Canada. We have a lot of people here in Canada that are depressed, and slowly but surely the world is catching up because the world is following the lifestyle of those who live in the developed world, right? In capitalist societies and countries. Most of the world, like if you look at India and China, they're sort of following the model. Okay? Sorry, give me a second. Osama? Can you just turn it down a bit? Can you just turn it down a bit? Yeah. Okay. Just don't want to bother you guys with the noise. So, let's just readjust the focus as well. Here we go. Okay. Nope. Okay, go back here, go back here. There we go. Okay. My mistake, guys. Sorry for annoying you with these minor adjustments. So, back to what I was saying. Natural byproduct. Most of the world, India, China, those are the big populations in the world, right? They're following a Western model, so to speak. And sooner or later, the people will have time to sit down and think, and they will have, not just that, they're starting to eat more Western foods, more lifestyles of sedentary lifestyles here in the West. So soon enough they'll have all the diseases and all the troubles that people living in the West are coming up with, which essentially depression happens to be one of them. So depression is, the cause of it is actually in the name itself. Depression, depressed, energy depressed. So energy goes like this, and then you depress the energy, so it gets depressed, which means that there seems to be, and there is, make no mistake about it, a natural energy in the human body, a natural energy in the human, right? In a human organism that sort of gets naturally expressed outwards into the universe. You see, much like a bee feels this energy, this urge to go from plant to plant, from flower to flower, for spreading pollen, right? For pollination. A bee does what a bee is inclined to do. It's the natural force, it's the Tao of the bee. And there seems to be a Tao of the human, the way of the human, the flow of the human. And it seems like we're pretty energetic creatures. it seems like we're very creative, we're very energetic. I mean, look at all these civilizations that we've built. Look at all these buildings. Look at the activity that's going on. Clearly, this human thing, this human organism is very active and very open and creative. And there seems to be a natural Tao, a natural way of which the human is most optimal. A fish is most optimal in the sea or in a river, in water. If you take a fish out of water, pretty soon it's gonna die. Pretty soon it's gonna die, right? So, in a similar fashion here, what we're doing, if you look at it more from a longer term perspective, is we're slowly taking the human organism out of its, so to speak, water, if we're comparing it to a fish, out of its natural habitat and natural ways of being that make it most optimal, and putting it in a different environment, artificial environment, which are city-states, really, when you think about it. It's city-states, at least in their modern way. No, I mean, really, you can build cities that are intertwined with nature. I believe in that. But in the modern way that they seem to be devoid of connection with the natural world. And so the human organism, the human animal, is taken out of its natural habitat and sort of put in an artificial place, you see? Causing it to be less than optimal. And that less than optimal slowly goes in a downward spiral into becoming manifesting into things like depression. Depression is just the human organism, the human body, the human way of being, the Tao of the human, not doing its thing, basically, causing the energy to be depressed. So a depressed person is someone who's not exercising or exercising very little, because one of the things about the human body is activity, is movement. A depressed person is someone who is thinking too much, having too much thoughts, living too much in their headspace. A depressed person is someone who lacks spiritual connection with the source of all things. And the modern way of living check marks all of these things. I mean, first of all, you don't even have to get up and go to the grocery store to get your food, or to go to even pick up your pizza. You can just go on your phone, right? And you can go to Uber Eats, or you can go to Skip the Dishes and order food, or you can go on Amazon or other websites to get your groceries delivered to you. So first of all, the whole grocery store thing, I mean, that's a big step. I mean, before you had to go and walk and run and hunt and gather your food, you don't have to do it anymore. That's the grocery store. But now we're taking it even further. You don't even have to go to the walk 10, 15 minutes to the grocery store. You can just sit in your home and order your food, okay? So, we're becoming very lazy, very sedentary. And that is not only less than optimal for the human organism, that is plain and simple deadly for you. That's deadly. You know, I have a thing from my book, The Master Player. I think I wrote something along the lines of, you have more risk of staying in your home than going outside. You know, you do, because if you're just staying at home all the time, you're inviting depression and disease and chronic illness to come to you pretty quickly. You really are. So if you're afraid to go out into the world because it's so cruel, actually you're taking a greater risk on your health and mental well-being by staying at home, by being sedentary. So that's the first thing. Honestly, that's the first step to make sure people aren't getting depressed. It's not a pretty thing to get depressed, right? I've been down a rabbit hole. So I'm not just speaking from a random place, I'm speaking from a place that I went into deep depression, so much so that I had suicidal thoughts, that I thought I was worthless, I thought I was a piece of shit. I thought all of these things about myself because I've been down that rabbit hole. And one of the things I wasn't doing is I wasn't moving. I was stuck in my stinky apartment the whole time. For a whole year, I was in my apartment. Barely left. I was sleeping at 7 a.m. and waking up at 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. Okay, I wasn't, you know, it was just a bad year. I was depressed, I had suicidal thoughts. I wasn't myself because I was sort of hijacked by this depression thing. By this energy that keeps telling me you're not good and giving me all these thoughts about suicide. And one of the things, I wasn't moving. I was in my apartment the whole time. I'd go out once a week to get my grocery, right? Because I guess we didn't have these services that will deliver food to you. Because if I had them back in, this was like 2010, right? If I had them, I wouldn't have even left my house. So, sedentary. That's the sedentary lifestyles that we all lead, that we're moving towards more and more as a society, right? It's causing all these problems, not just depression, but many, many other things. Now, as far as, of course, there's the food element. There's so many things here. I'm just being vague in this video. There is the mental and the spiritual aspects of depression. One of the reasons people get depressed, besides not being active and eating food that is full of toxins and chemicals, one of the reasons people are depressed is because they sort of have an identity crisis in their head about who they are. This was certainly for me the case. I got to a point where, first of all, I didn't think highly of myself. Like, my self-image of myself was very low. Very low. And I had an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know, like, was I Muslim? Was I atheist? What is my label? I was having a problem figuring out what my label is. You know, what am I exactly? So it's just this crisis of trying to label myself and trying to gain validity from the external world. And that can cause you depression, because if you place yourself low on the hierarchy that is in your head, like, oh, I am low because I can't get girls to like me, or I can't get guys to like me, and like you place yourself on the lower end of the hierarchy that exists primarily in your head. You know, if you have all this overthinking and who am I, what all these labels, that can cause you to really think low of yourself and causes you depression, right? One of the things for me, like, I couldn't talk to girls, and that oh my god, at times that caused me, like, I'm not kidding, suicidal thoughts. Like, I totally understand when someone, like, is terrified of talking to girls, or doesn't know how to talk, doesn't, you know, or feels like they're not validated by the opposite sex. For me, that would sometimes cause me suicidal thoughts, because I thought, well, here I am, I'm doomed to be alone forever. Nobody likes me, like, clearly I'm terrible with the opposite sex. And so all these things, for other people, it could be like, I'm never gonna have enough money, I'm never gonna, or, you know, my dad thinks I'm a piece of shit, my friends think I'm a piece of shit. Everybody has their own little stories in their head where they think they're pieces of shit, and they think they're worthless and they have no value. And that, you know, comes from a deeper issue, which is a lack of connection with spirit, a lack of connection with source energy, a lack of connection with a higher power. Really, like, it is a lack of connection with a higher power. It is not knowing the deepest part of you. When you don't know the deepest part of you, you're stuck in these ego games, and you take your roles very seriously, you see? But once you make contact with your deeper self, that depression sort of goes away on its own, because you no longer identify with the ego self so much. You see it as a role that you play out, and that is constantly changing, you see? And it really is constantly changing, you know? Like, right now, I am a YouTuber. That's my ego role that I'm playing. 10 years from now, I might be a yoga instructor. And there you go, my ego role, my ego mask, my role has changed. So once you stop taking these ego roles so seriously, and you identify with the deeper self, which is I am the observer, the watcher, the Atman, and you really know the deepest part of you, and you identify primarily with the deepest part and secondarily with the roles that you play. I am a Muslim, I am a Christian, I am a Jew, I am a Hindu, I am a yogi, I am a YouTuber, I am this, I am that, right? You just sort of look at these things as secondary. Primary is I am the watcher, I am the Atman, I am the observer, I am the love and awareness. It's a world of difference. The depression sort of goes away on its own. It really does. It sort of just starts to dissipate on its own momentum. And what I'm talking about here is an experience. You have to experience this for yourself. This is why many people, when they try mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, they say, my depression went away after like one use, right? They've done studies, the Johns Hopkins studies, and I think something like 60% of the participants, or 2/3, reported who were facing death and were having depressive thoughts about death. They said after one use, 2/3 of them, they said it was gone. Any depressive thoughts that I had, anything was gone. Because what these psilocybin mushrooms do, and by the way, you don't have to take psilocybin mushrooms to feel this, but I'm using psilocybin mushrooms as an example to illustrate that this is a feeling, an experience you have to experience. What they do is they make you experience what I'm talking about. They make you experience being the watcher, make you experience being the loving awareness. They make you experience being the Atman. And it's a great, amazing experience because you sort of look at your roles that you play and you laugh at them. Because you laugh at yourself because you were taking yourself so seriously, right? Like in many of my mushroom trips, whenever I think of Saeed, I start to laugh hysterically because the awareness in me knows that this is just a role I'm playing and I shouldn't take it too seriously. But again, when we take the roles too seriously because we're so identified with these external, secondary roles, when we are identified with these as our primary roles, we're gonna suffer. We will suffer because we will always be playing this game of ranking up ourselves in comparison to everyone else around us. And that can cause massive depression. It really can cause massive depression. Combine that with lack of physical exercise and activity and an overall sedentary, indoor, technological type lifestyle. I mean, make no mistake, there's a lot of radiations around you from your phone, from your laptop, from all these appliances, your microwave. And if you're in your house all the time, big problems, my friend, big problems. Not only are you not moving your body, you're also being exposed to things that are harming it. Combine that with constantly being stuck in your head, constantly playing the game of ranking who you think you are and ranking it up, and it's a hell. The mind can be a hell. Really, the heart is where the heaven is, the mind is where the hell is. And if you're stuck in your mind, you're stuck in hell. And it can cause you massive depression. What the world needs is an evolution and a revolution in consciousness. We need a spiritual awakening. We need people to wake up from sleep. Okay, because once you wake up, it's not that you won't experience depression, but it's much less likely. Because as long as you remember your primary identity, your deeper self, even when things don't go your way, you'll manage to have a smile on your face. Even when things don't go your way, your connection with your deeper self, your higher self, will be more than enough to carry you through the adversity that you're going through, right? So my heart goes out to anybody who is experiencing depression. It's very important to know why you have it, and it's very important to see that it's a natural byproduct. And yeah, good luck to everyone. Yeah, I guess that's it for now. Make sure to check out my free book, 5 Powerful Habits to Dominate Life in All Areas. If you want some freebies that'll help you with anxiety, depression, etc., it's 19 pages. You can go to 5powerfulhabits.com or the link for it in the description. Also, check out my book, The Master Player, a practical guide to win the game of life. And I can guarantee you, if you read and apply what I wrote in that book, you'll never be depressed again. Okay, it's just there's certain things you can do in life, it is my conviction because it is my experience, that are anti-depression. And if you keep doing them, it's almost impossible to be depressed. So it's an entertaining book, themasterplayer.com. You'll see a link for it in the description, in the comment as well. And also, I am doing one-on-one consulting via Skype online. So if you want to talk about anything, if you're going through a depression right now, an anxiety phase, a breakup, or something of that sort, anything really. You can talk about impersonal stuff too. You can book a session, so you'll find the link for it down below somewhere in the description. Perhaps in the comments too, if I remember to put the links. And that's it, guys. God bless you all. I love every single one of you. But don't forget to subscribe, or you're gonna sleep with the fishes, and that's kind of depressing. So subscribe.